Okay, YouTubers, another quick game of interplanetary I Spy going on here. There are some calcified animals in this image. Now, this is the dried out lake bed at the bottom of Mount Sharp. This is Mount Sharp up here. This is the the dried out kind of salty lake that was there. And there are preserved and calcified remains of creatures around the edge of this lake. You can actually see the water line. That's where the water line was, probably, here and here. And the part of the image we want to look at is in the bottom right corner here. Now, I've already done some videos on this, and I've already shown some of these things before. So if you want to see this thing here, let's go in a bit closer. The Mars bear, if you want to see that, go back to my channel and you can find it there. There's a whole bunch of things here. Now, what's incredible about this particular part of the image, there's loads of other things in here that I've already covered in previous videos, but what's amazing about this is that we have what looks like the calcified bear here, a preserved bear. There's also a little bird here, and there's another bird here, okay? Now I'm going to show you close-ups of this very quickly. The new find, which is astonishing in my opinion, is this bird, just here. Now, unfortunately, it's right on the edge of the image, so we've only got the top part of it here, the neck, head and beak. And we've even got an eye here, and you can see the beak details here. It's got kind of jagged parts to the beak here, like some birds do on Earth. I will give some credit here to one of my subscribers who sent in an image to me showing what looks like a bird. I've got his clip here. This was sent by Bob Renfro about a week or so ago. Here it is, just here. You can see this, he's kind of cut the edge off it here. I think he took a clip on his mobile phone or something, who knows. But he sent this in via email to me and said, check this out, there seems to be another bird or something in this image. So thanks to Bob Renfro for sending that clip in. That made me take another look at this, so that was really cool, because it meant that I took another look at this part of the image and went over it again, because we have the little bear here. This is only probably about a foot tall. We have that bird that Bob spotted just here, and we have the bird that I spotted, the new one, down here. I've marked them on a little map here, okay? So I've done a little image map. Bear, possible bird, bird. Now, I would say that's a possible bird. This may be partially an optical trick. There's not really enough detail on that because it's a bit further away, it's a bit small. There's not really enough detail on it to say one way or the other. Let me show you a close-up of that one first, and then we'll move on to the main one. I've got some clips down here of that thing. There it is. Here's a close-up. Now, this may be a partial optical illusion. There may be a kind of little pile of sand leaning up against this rock and making it look like a beak here, but we do have what seems to be an eye structure and a head and a back and a wing coming around here, perhaps. Not really sure about that one, not really enough detail to say either way, but the fact that there are other creatures that look like they've been calcified and preserved in this area leads me to believe that may well be. And the bear, I'll show you in a minute. For those who haven't seen it, do go back and watch the Mars bear video that I did a couple of weeks ago. It's got some astonishing detail. But the main thing I was going to show you today is this bird. Now, this bird here is quite astonishing. Absolutely incredible, I would say. And it's really quite close. It's right at the bottom of the image, right on the edge. As you can see, I've had to clip this out here, taking a clip of it. And I've enlarged it and enhanced the contrast in this image so that we can see a bit more detail. There's feathery-like structures to it in here. You can see those textures there. And we have an eye and quite a long beak. And we have some detail in the beak here, much like you would see on some Earth-like birds, or Earth birds, I should say. Now, what type of bird is it? This was a lake bed. I would imagine this would be a wading bird, much like some I've got up here. I've got some examples here. To me, it looks similar to perhaps an ibis or a flamingo, or perhaps even a pelican. I think there's a pelican up here somewhere. Let's have a look. There's a pelican. There's so many types of birds on Earth. There's many thousands of different species, and they all have very specific types of beaks for eating specific types of food. And wading birds obviously have quite long legs and long beaks. Whereas something like a toucan like this has got quite short little legs and a massive beak. I mean, I could go on and on and on about this. I'm not going to. I'm sure a lot of you know what these birds are, and probably seen many out in the wild and in zoos and stuff like that. Anyway, so I can't find a direct match for this because this is a bird on Mars, not on Earth. But the head shape, to me, the way it kind of curves around, is similar to an ibis, but the beak is something a bit shorter and a bit wider. Now, it did cross my mind that this might be something like a pterosaur or some kind of flying lizard, but who's to say? I'm seeing textures in here that look like feathery kind of textures on the neck here as it curves around, and we've got quite a large wide beak here, unlike an ibis. An ibis has got a much more long, thin, curved beak. And incidentally, this bird is very similar in scale to some of the ones that I found previously. It's not the same type. There's this video I did also quite recently, in October of last year, called 4 Birds Found on Mars. So I'm just going to show you a very quick clip of this. There's this one. Now this is more like an ibis. And there's an amazing blue colour. It's not very clear, this one. It's quite a long way off. This is quite large. I would say this is about a foot long, maybe a foot and a half. It's really quite large. So there were wading birds in this area, feeding from the lake and around the edge of the lake. This one here has got quite a large cranium, got 2 eyes here, and a curved long beak, but not much detail in the image, unfortunately. There are others as well. Let's go to this one. This is a hawk of some sort. This is quite large. You can see the eyes here and the beak, and it also has these jagged structures to the beak, which aren't teeth, I don't think, but they're kind of jagged parts to the beak. Many birds on Earth have similar kind of serrations on their beak. This often means they might be a fish-feeding bird or something like that, or that isn't necessarily an indication of a fish diet, but there we are. So there are lots of these things on Mars, and I found loads of birds, and there was this thing, which I published a while ago as well. This thing looks like a flying bird. I'm just going to show you a clip of this now. Now this video is called Bird or UFO Spotted on Mars. So here it is. We have one here. Now this is just probably less than a kilometre from the area we are looking at today. That's the edge of Gale Crater in the background, which is about 40 plus miles away from where we are. That's a very, very long way away. But this isn't that far away. This looks like a hawk. The wing structure here, you can see the body. Now there isn't a great deal of detail here. This was taken not by the mass camera. Yeah, nav cam it says here. So that's navigation camera. So these are not colour images, and they're not very high resolution. So what we're getting here is quite a low res image, which I've cropped. And you can actually see the pixels in the image here. It's a bit grainy, but it's there, and you can see a very clear silhouette of what looks like a bird. This would be the front end, this would be the beak end here, and this would be the tail end. And the wing configuration here looks very similar to a hawk in flight. And you can even see, if you look really carefully, let's pause that, there's a sort of shadow below here. Now that may be where her feet are hanging down slightly, but the resolution of the photograph isn't high enough to pick up all the detail, which is why we're not seeing a beak, although there is a slight point to it there, and we're not seeing feet hanging down, but we are seeing some kind of shadow there, which means there's something there. Okay, and you've even got a reflection coming off the top here, where it's probably a lighter colour on top, perhaps. So this is in shadow because the sun's above it, so the wings and body are in shadow, but on top here, the light is reflecting off it. So this may be a light coloured bird. I can't tell you what colour it is, obviously, because it's a black and white photograph. Here we are. So this is only about a mile away from where we are today, perhaps only a kilometre. The rover's looking towards the edge of the crater. There are other possible UFOs in the area as well that have been spotted. So if I show you that again, that's the edge of Gale Crater. The rover's down here, below this ridge. We've got this ridge down here, and a bit further down is where the rover is, looking across to the edge of Gale Crater. This is very many miles away. Gale Crater is, I think, 93 miles across, and the rover is near the middle of that. So this is about 40 miles, approximately, from where we're looking from to the edge of this crater. Okay, and the crater is 4.7 kilometres deep. That's its deepest point. We're not at the deepest point here, but we're about 4.5 kilometres down. So we're almost as far down as we can go. But we've actually come up a bit from the lowest point. Okay, so there was that bird. Now I thought this might be a UFO or something else, and in fact I was trying to convince myself this wasn't a bird, because we're told that the conditions on Mars are not conducive for living creatures. Now this may be the case. This is an actual UFO. This isn't a bird. This is something a lot more interesting, in my opinion. It's a UFO, and you can see the shape of it there. It's got a rounded part on top, like a dome, part sticking out underneath. There's also other UFOs. So if you want to check that out, that one is called Bird or UFO Spotted on Mars. So you can go back and watch that. So there are things flying around. Now, is it possible that there are living birds still there? Like what I've just potentially shown you. Is that possible? We're told that the conditions on Mars are not conducive to any life because the air pressure is extremely low, there's almost no water, and any water that does appear doesn't last very long because it boils away because of the very low air pressure. That may well be the case, but it doesn't mean that there isn't life there. We have animals and creatures on Earth that live in extremely harsh conditions. Miles and miles down in the oceans, we have small microbes and creatures that live around nuclear reactors, and all sorts of extremophiles that live in amazingly harsh conditions. So it is possible. Just because we don't know how they can do it doesn't mean they don't do it. I always assume that there is something there to be seen. And that's why I find things like this, also with help from subscribers who send pictures in as well. But as I've shown before, I mean, this bear, this is an animal. It's got a head, it's got eyes, it's got teeth. All you need to do is take a clip and brighten that up. You can see it. It's on Mars, so it's not the same species. It has some profound differences in morphology, especially of the beak, which is quite thick. It's almost like a heron sort of beak. It's a bit more substantial, like this. It's not going to match one that we look at from Earth because it's not from Earth. That's the simple point to it. And if you want to check out how I think some of these things were preserved in the lake bed, which dried out, I'll leave a link to this below as well. This was about Lake Natron in Africa. I showed this in a previous video as well. This is what Gale Crater Lake may have looked like, a very salty, deadly lake in its latter stages before it dried out completely. It may have been very caustic and very alkaline, and if you fell in it, you may have been calcified like this and preserved, almost turned to stone like these are here. Okay? Now, I'm not saying it's exactly the same process, but it would have been similar. These birds and bats are not truly calcified, explains scientists, but instead are coated with sodium carbonate or sodium bicarbonate. leaving them brittle and statue-like. Sodium carbonate was used long ago in Egyptian mummification. Funny that, isn't it? And also acts as a preservative for these creatures. Right. So I'll leave a link to that. You can read through this. This is fascinating, by the way. And look at the level of preservation on these things. It's absolutely incredible. It's like they're literally frozen in time. Just going to zoom in there. Let's look at the raw part of the image. There we are. There it is. You've got an eye, you've got a beak, and we've got a nice, lovely shaped head and neck curving round. Unfortunately, this is right on the edge of the image, so we're only seeing that part of it. But this is good. This is good detail. There are a few other things that I spotted in this area, but I'm not going to go over those today. I'll probably come back to this in a few days' time, perhaps. But there we are. I'm giving NASA the bird here. They're not going to like this one. They'll probably say it's pareidolia or just a rock that looks a bit like a bird. It's got an eye, it's got a beak, it's got a neck. It's too good. It's way too good to be a coincidence. And it's next to two other possible specimens, like I just showed you, like the bear and like that other little bird. And in fact, if I quickly go over this, there's what seems to be a calcified dinosaur or something up here as well, just here. I showed that in the previous video. It's got a head here, it's got a neck with vertebrae and a body, but no limbs. The limbs may have been torn off or eaten off or broken off. But this area was inhabited, not just by people, but by animals. And they would have come to this lake to drink. They may have fought and eaten each other. There would have been a whole crazy food chain going on here. There were fish in this lake. There were small little critters like probably shrimp as well. The fish probably ate the shrimp. The birds probably ate the fish. And the bears probably ate whatever they could get their hands on. The birds and the fish. And there were larger birds, like birds of prey, coming down, swooping down and catching some of these creatures. Some of the smaller birds and the fish as well, perhaps. Or maybe they would wait for one of these creatures to catch one of these little fish. Or a larger fish even. And then they would have swooped down and just taken it straight off them, like they do on Earth. So we have evidence here of actual current life on Mars. Not only very freshly preserved specimens like this, which are not very old, right? There's no way this could be millions of years old. Absolutely no way. This bird skull here, this hawk, I would say looks no more than a few years old, right? This is fresh. This may only be 10 years old, or 5 years old, or 3 years old. I mean, it could be way older. The fact that there is very little oxygen and moisture on the surface means that these things could be preserved for hundreds and hundreds or even thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, without degrading much. And the only thing that would happen to them eventually is the wind would erode them away. So this isn't very old. These are fresh. As I've been saying for years now, a lot of these things look fresh. Doesn't mean they are, but when I say fresh, I mean less than 10,000 years old, right? Okay, but some of them could only be 10. If we've got things flying around, there's also this one that I found in this video here. It's called Mars Life Uncovered, NASA Deception Busted Part 1. Okay, this one looks like a type of ostrich, similar morphology to an ostrich. We have a beak here, a head here, we have a feathery part of the body, and we have these huge legs coming down here. You can even see the joints here, and massive, huge feet and toes. Now, look at it. Look at the morphology here. This is a bird. This looks like a dead bird. Other people have said it looks like other things, but I don't think it is. I think it's a dead bird with long, thick legs. And you can even see here the toes. There's one slightly buried there that comes out. And one there. Massive, great big feet. And there was also this. This isn't a bird, obviously, but this is one of my favourite fossilised or mud encrusted specimens. It's a giant humanoid skull. And for those of you that don't believe there was life on Mars, this proves it. What I'm showing you here today proves it. Okay, there we are. You've got shark-like teeth. This is not human. This is about 18 inches from the chin to the top here. massive. There were birds on Mars and may even be some flying around right now. Okay? See you soon.